Sunlight filtered through the intricately carved curtains, gently spilling into the luxuriously decorated bedroom. Sarah stood before the full-length mirror, clad in a wedding dress as pure and white as snow. The delicate lace and sparkling rhinestones shimmering enchantingly in the sunlight, framing her like a fairy about to step into a magical realm. Yet, at this moment, her eyes held no trace of the joy one would expect from a bride-to-be. Instead, they were filled with boundless sorrow and despair. Just yesterday, on what should have been the happiest eve of her life, fate dealt her a cruel blow. With a heart full of excitement, she had gone ahead to the hotel to check on the wedding preparations, hoping to surprise her fiancé Felix, only to hear a familiar voice coming from the door of the luxurious suite. Her hand trembled as she pushed open the door that wasn't fully closed, and the scene before her shattered her world in an instant. Felix, the man she loved deeply and was about to marry, was intimately entwined with her most trusted best friend, Lucy, in the room. Their clothes were disheveled, and their eyes were filled with intoxication and abandon. Why? Sarah's voice quivered, laden with endless pain and accusation. Her words echoed through the room, yet fell like a stone into the sea, met with no response. Felix and Lucy hurriedly separated, their faces etched with panic and embarrassment. "Sarah, it's not what you think," Felix stammered, trying to explain. However, to Sarah, his words sounded like pale and powerless excuses. "Enough!" Sarah interrupted him, tears bursting forth and sliding down her fair cheeks. Her heart felt as if it were being pierced by thousands of needles, the pain making it hard to breathe. She turned and fled recklessly from the room filled with betrayal, leaving Felix and Lucy standing there, bewildered. Sarah returned home in a daze and locked herself in her room. She stared at the wedding dress, the pain in her heart surging like a tidal wave. She could never have imagined that the person she loved most and trusted most would do something so disgraceful on the eve of her wedding. In the throes of agony, she suddenly felt a wave of nausea, her stomach churning violently. She hurried to the bathroom, and after a bout of vomiting, a foreboding sense surged within her heart. The next day, Sarah arrived at the hospital with a heavy heart. When the doctor told her she was 1 month pregnant, her mind went completely blank. This child was conceived during the sweetest moments she shared with Felix. Yet now, it had become a difficult dilemma in her heart. She gently touched her still flat belly, tears blurring her vision once again. This child, what choice should she make? After a painful struggle, Sarah decided to keep the child. She knew deeply that this child was innocent, and no matter what happened, she could not deny this little life the right to come into the world. However, she also knew that at home, in this wealthy family tangled with interests, she could not stand firm as an illegitimate child. So, she made a bold decision, to escape the marriage, leave home, and face everything that was about to come on her own. Sarah told no one about her decision. She simply packed a few clothes, took all her savings, and under the cover of night, quietly left home. Like a wounded little bird, she left the warm nest and flew alone toward the unknown distance. Sarah arrived in a strange city, where everything was so fresh and unfamiliar to her. She rented a tiny apartment, with only a worn-out bed and a simple wardrobe inside, a stark contrast to the luxurious life she once knew. However, at this moment, she no longer had the heart to care about these things. She knew that from now on, she had to rely on her own hands to support herself and the child in her womb. Sarah began searching for work everywhere, but because she was pregnant, many jobs closed their doors to her. She faced rejection time and again, disappointment after disappointment, yet she never gave up. Finally, she found a job as a waitress in a small restaurant. Although the work was hard, standing for long hours every day and enduring difficult customers, Sarah cherished it deeply. As her pregnancy progressed, Sarah's body grew increasingly uncomfortable. Morning sickness left her unable to eat anything, and her legs often swelled. Yet, whenever she touched her belly and felt the little life beating inside, her heart filled with strength. She told herself that for the sake of her children, she must persevere. During a prenatal checkup, Sarah received news that filled her with both joy and worry. She was expecting quadruplets. When the doctor delivered the news, tears shimmered in her eyes. She was thrilled to be carrying 4 precious little lives, Yet she also feared whether she could bear the responsibility of raising 4 children. But she did not back down. From that day on, she threw herself into learning everything about childcare. Every day after work, she would go to the bookstore to buy related books, and despite her exhaustion, she would diligently read them at home. In her small apartment, she arranged a cozy little corner for the children. Though simple, it was filled with the love she had for them. Day by day, Sarah struggled to work in this unfamiliar city while bravely nurturing the 4 little lives growing inside her. She didn't know what the future held for her, but there was only one belief in her heart: no matter what, she would bring her children into this world healthy. Time quietly slipped by during Sarah's arduous yet hopeful days. As the due date approached, her body grew heavier, and every step felt like it drained all her strength. But the light in her eyes never dimmed. That was the eager anticipation of new life about to arrive. In that small, dim apartment, Sarah had already prepared everything for her children. Though the items were simple and plain, each one was filled with her boundless love. The day of delivery felt like a heart-stopping battle. Sarah was pushed into the delivery room, pain crashing over her like a relentless tide, wave after wave, nearly overwhelming her consciousness. But whenever she felt she could no longer hold on, the adorable faces of her children would appear in her mind. That was her sole motivation to persevere. After long and arduous hours, the delivery room finally echoed with the crisp cries of newborns, one after another, like the most beautiful symphony in the world. "Congratulations, it's quadruplets, 2 boys and 2 girls, the doctor's tired yet joyful voice rang in Sarah's ears. She weakly opened her eyes and watched as the nurses brought the 4 tiny bundles to her one by one. In that moment, all the pain vanished, replaced by overwhelming joy and emotion. She looked at the children's rosy little faces, their tiny mouths, tightly closed eyes, tears uncontrollably streaming down. Her eldest son was a boy, small in stature but full of cleverness. As he grew, Sarah gradually realized he seemed to possess extraordinary abilities. One time, Sarah was sitting on the sofa, frowning and sighing over work troubles. Her little eldest son came over and gently stroked Sarah's cheek with his tender little hand. In a babyish voice saying, "Mom, don't be sad. I know what you're worried about. Everything will be all right." Sarah looked at her son in surprise, at first thinking he was just trying to comfort her. But later, her eldest son could always accurately say what she was thinking, and only then did she realize that her son actually had the power to read minds. The second daughter was a lovely little princess, carved like a delicate jade figurine, with a pair of big eyes that twinkled as if hiding countless stars. However, her magical gift of prophecy often left Sarah both amused and bewildered. One day, the second daughter looked at a dark cloud drifting across the sky and suddenly said, "Mom, it's going to rain soon, and it will be a heavy, heavy rain." Sarah glanced up at the sky. Although there were clouds, the sun was still shining brightly. She just thought her daughter was joking. But before long, a torrential downpour really did start, catching the unprepared Sarah completely off guard. From then on, the second daughter's predictions were always accurate. Whether it was the family cat going missing or an upcoming event in the neighborhood, she always knew in advance. The youngest son was a mischievous little boy, full of curiosity about everything around him. He loved to take the toys in the house apart into pieces, then use his own imaginative ideas to put them back together again. Once, the youngest son saw that the household clock was broken, so he took it upon himself to tinker with it. A few days later, he actually managed to fix the clock and even added some strange devices to it, making the clock not only tell time but also play music. Sarah looked at her son's creation, both surprised and pleased. She knew her son had a unique talent for invention and creativity. The youngest daughter was a quiet little lady, always sitting quietly to the side, watching her older siblings play. Her smile was like the warm sun in spring, able to dispel all gloom. Once, the eldest son had a dispute with classmates at school and felt downhearted. The youngest daughter came over to him, gently hugged him, and stroked his back with her tender little hands. Before long, the eldest son's mood calmed, and a smile returned to his face. Sarah discovered that her youngest daughter possessed a healing superpower, a single smile or embrace from her could make those around her feel incredibly warm and reassured. Sarah raised 4 children on her own, and the hardships of life were beyond imagination. Every day, she would get up early to prepare breakfast for the kids and then take them to kindergarten. After work, she would rush home without a moment's rest to cook, do laundry, and help the children with their homework. Though exhausted, whenever she saw their innocent smiles and heard their childish calls of mom, her heart would fill with happiness and contentment. However, the peaceful life did not last long. They had been searching for Sarah's whereabouts, never imagining that she was hiding with her family's bloodline in this unremarkable little town. Sarah had a vague feeling that a pair of eyes were watching her and the children from the shadows, filling her heart with unease. One day, her eldest son came back from kindergarten, his little face tense and burdened with worry. Sensing something was wrong, Sarah quickly pulled him close and gently asked, "Sweetheart, what's wrong? Did something upsetting happen at kindergarten?" Her eldest son hesitated, then looked up at Sarah and said seriously, "Mom, today at the kindergarten gate, I overheard some strangers' thoughts. They're looking for us, and it seems like they're from Dad's side." Sarah's face instantly turned pale, the fear she had always harbored had finally come true. Sarah knew that his power was vast, and if they found her and the children's lives would be plunged into endless trouble. She couldn't let the children suffer any harm. After a night of tossing and turning, she decided to move again, taking the children away from this city that had started to feel somewhat familiar, to a place more unfamiliar and safer. The next day, Sarah got up early and began packing. She moved quickly and methodically, organizing the children's clothes, toys, and some daily necessities one by one. Although the children didn't quite understand what was happening, seeing their mother's serious expression, they obediently helped. When everything was ready, Sarah led the children out of the cramped apartment. She looked back at the place once filled with laughter and tears, her heart a mix of emotions. But she knew that for the sake of the children's future, she had to bravely move forward. In the new city, Sarah rented a more secluded house. Though still modest, she believed that as long as the children were by her side, no matter where they were, they could create a happy life of their own. She watched the children curiously running around the new room, a determined smile spreading across her face. She silently vowed to protect the children, to let them grow up healthy and happy, no matter what difficulties and challenges the future might hold. Sarah's life with her 4 adorable little ones in the new city slowly began amidst busyness and anticipation. The morning sunlight gently poured over their newly rented small house, casting a warm golden glow over this cozy little home. Sarah woke up early to prepare breakfast for the children. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of bread and the sweet scent of milk. The 4 little ones laughed and played in their room, packing their little backpacks, full of curiosity and excitement for the kindergarten life about to begin. "Sweethearts, come eat breakfast quickly, or you'll be late for kindergarten," Sarah called gently as she set the breakfast on the table. The 4 little ones, like cheerful little birds, chirped happily as they gathered around the table and devoured their breakfast. "Mom, today I want to be the first to arrive at kindergarten and make lots and lots of new friends." The eldest son's eyes sparkled with excitement as he said, "Me too, me too." The second daughter, younger son, and little daughter all chimed in eagerly. Watching the children's innocent and pure expressions, Sarah felt a deep sense of comfort. All the exhaustion from the daily grind seemed to vanish in that moment. Upon arriving at the new kindergarten, the children quickly adapted to group life. The kindergarten's colorful toys, kind and friendly teachers, and lively, adorable little friends all brought them joy. However, the little ones' unique abilities also stirred up wave after wave of little commotions within the kindergarten. One day, the kindergarten organized an outdoor activity, and the children played freely on the playground. The second daughter, with her big, watery eyes, looked around curiously. Suddenly, she furrowed her brows and muttered, "Oh no, a big dark cloud is going to drift over soon, then it will rain, and everyone will get soaked." The children nearby listened, all wearing puzzled expressions as they looked at her, then burst into giggles, thinking she was talking nonsense. But before long, the once clear sky was covered by a large patch of dark clouds, and raindrops the size of beans began to fall with a pitter-patter sound. The children immediately scattered in chaos, screaming as they ran back to the classroom. The teacher hurriedly organized the kids to take shelter from the rain, watching everyone drenched like soaking wet chickens, feeling both annoyed and amused. Meanwhile, the second daughter stood aside, looking at the scene with an innocent expression. Elsewhere, the youngest son was playing with a few friends in the craft area. His little head was always filled with all sorts of strange ideas, and as he looked at the various materials in the craft zone, a bold idea began to take shape in his mind. So, over the next few days, the youngest son used his lunch breaks and free time to secretly tinker with his invention. Finally, on a sunny afternoon, the youngest son's masterpiece was completed, a robot with a strange appearance. The robot was made of cardboard boxes, plastic bottles, and some wires. Although it looked simple, it was full of creativity. The youngest son excitedly took the robot to the playground to show his invention to his friends. He pressed a button on the robot, and it began to buzz and operate. But no one expected that the robot would run wild like a runaway horse, uncontrollably crashing around. It knocked down the block castle the children had built one moment, and the next, it scattered the toys all over the playground. The children were terrified, running in all directions, their screams rising one after another. The teacher hurried over, trying to stop the crazy robot, but it took a great deal of effort before it finally ceased operating. Looking at the playground in disarray, the youngest son hung his head low, clutching the hem of his shirt tightly, realizing he had caused a big mess. And the little daughter remained that quiet and sweet little lady. During an art class, a child suddenly began crying from stomach pain. The teacher and other children gathered around, looking very anxious. The little daughter quietly walked over to the child, gently held his hand, and wore a tender smile on her face. Miraculously, after a while, the child's complexion gradually returned to a healthy pink, and his crying stopped. He looked at the little daughter gratefully and said, "Thank you, you're amazing." The teacher and other parents were all astonished by the scene and eagerly asked how the little daughter had done it. The little daughter just smiled shyly and said nothing. These events soon reached Sarah's ears, filling her heart with worry. She knew that although the children's special abilities were extraordinary, in this ordinary world, they might bring unnecessary trouble. So, on a quiet night, Sarah called her children close, her expression serious yet gentle as she said, "Sweethearts, Mommy knows each of you has very special abilities. These powers are wonderful, but outside, we can't just use them whenever we want, okay? Otherwise, people might think we're strange, and it could even put us in danger." The children nodded, half understanding. The eldest son said earnestly, "Mom, I understand. I won't read other people's thoughts casually anymore." The second daughter obediently added, "Mom, I'll keep my mouth shut and not say things recklessly." The youngest son patted his chest and promised, "Mom, from now on, I'll tell the teacher and you before I invent anything. I won't cause trouble at kindergarten anymore." The little daughter nestled into Sarah's arms and whispered, "Mom, I'll listen to you too, and won't use my powers carelessly." Watching her children's mature and understanding faces, Sarah felt both comforted and heartbroken. She held them tightly, planting gentle kisses on their foreheads, hoping they would grow up safe and sound, guarding their little secrets in this ordinary world. Since then, although the children still occasionally felt the urge to show off their abilities, whenever they remembered their mother's words, they would make a conscious effort to restrain themselves. At kindergarten, they remained those lively and adorable little kids, joyfully playing and learning with their friends, while their special abilities became the most precious secret within this small family, waiting for the right moment to shine once again. Under Sarah's careful guidance, the children's life at kindergarten gradually settled into a routine, and as they diligently controlled their special powers, their days passed peacefully and happily. However, the eldest son's curious little mind, exploring the wondrous world of the internet, inadvertently stirred up a huge commotion. On a weekend afternoon, the sunlight lazily spilled onto the desk by the window. The eldest son sat in front of the computer, his eyes fixed on the screen, fingers dancing deftly across the keyboard. He was deeply immersed in the joy of exploring the online world, effortlessly navigating through complex codes and data with a talent far beyond his peers. Unintentionally, he discovered a deeply hidden network link. Driven by curiosity, he clicked on it without hesitation. The page slowly loaded, revealing internal confidential information from Felix Corporation. The dense data and files were like mysterious keys, unlocking the eldest son's desire to explore. He had no idea that this company was intricately connected to his family, he only found the information intriguing and mysterious. Driven by curiosity, the eldest son unleashed his exceptional computer skills and effortlessly hacked into Felix's company network. As the eldest son manipulated the system, Felix's company servers began to malfunction. The once smoothly running system suddenly became sluggish, files couldn't be opened, data kept disappearing, and the entire company's operations descended into chaos. Employees stared at the constantly flashing error messages on their screens, panic-stricken, rushing to the technical department for help. However, the technicians were helpless in the face of this sudden cyber attack, forced to watch helplessly as the company's system gradually collapsed. When Felix learned of the situation, he flew into a rage. Pacing back and forth in his office, his face dark and stormy as if it could drip water, he roared, "Who dares to have such audacity to mess with my company?" His eyes revealed boundless fury and murderous intent. He immediately summoned the company's elite team and ordered a thorough investigation into the matter. They must identify the mastermind behind the scenes and restore the company's system as quickly as possible. Under the relentless investigation of the professional team, the clues gradually pointed to the eldest son. When Felix saw the investigation results and learned that a child had hacked into his company's network, he was deeply shocked. But soon, from the child's information, he keenly detected Sarah's trace. A complex wave of emotion surged in his heart, regret for his past mistakes, and a longing and concern for Sarah and the children. Yet at this moment, more than anything, as a father, he was eager to see his children immediately. Felix hesitated not for a moment and immediately sent people to find where Sarah and the children were living, following the clues. When that group of men in suits appeared at the doorstep, Sarah was playing with the children in the living room. Seeing these strangers with ill intentions, a foreboding feeling welled up in Sarah's heart. "May I ask, who are you? What are you doing here?" Sarah stood up cautiously, shielding the children behind her. The man at the forefront stepped forward respectfully and said, "Sarah, we are Felix's people. Felix has learned of you and the children's whereabouts and specifically sent us to bring you back." Hearing the name Felix, Sarah's face instantly turned pale. She never expected that Felix had still found them. "I will not go with you," Sarah said firmly, her eyes filled with unwavering determination. "When I left back then, I never intended to return. The children are mine, and I will not let you take them away." At that moment, the eldest son stepped out from behind Sarah, looking at the people before him with a youthful face devoid of any fear. "It was me who hacked into your company's network, it has nothing to do with Mom. If you dare harm Mom, I won't let you off." He spoke loudly, his small frame radiating a powerful aura. Felix's men exchanged glances, surprised that such a little child could be so brave. But they had orders, they had to take Sarah and the children back. The two sides reached a stalemate, the atmosphere tense and charged. Just then, Felix arrived in person. Standing at the doorway, he looked at the scene before him, his heart a tumult of emotions. He saw Sarah, the woman he once loved deeply but had hurt profoundly, now stronger and more independent than ever. And the four adorable children, each bearing the traces of him and Sarah in their features, stirred a deep surge of fatherly love within him. "Sarah, it's me," Felix stepped forward, speaking softly, his voice trembling slightly. Seeing Felix, Sarah's anger flared instantly. "What are you doing here? Wasn't what happened between you and Lucy enough? Now you want to take my children away?" "Not a chance," she shouted, tears welling up in her eyes. Felix lowered his head, his face full of guilt. "Sarah, I know I was wrong. I've regretted it all these years. I've been looking for you for a long time, just wanting to make amends and give you and the children a home." He took a step forward, trying to approach the children. Don't come any closer. Sarah held the children tightly. I raised these kids all by myself through hard work. You have no right to be their father. Where have you been all these years? How much do you really know about our lives? The children looked at the unfamiliar man before them, their hearts filled with confusion and fear. The second daughter hid behind Sarah, whispering, "Mom, who is he? Why does he look so fierce?" The youngest son frowned as he looked at Felix and said, "Is he really the boss of that company? I don't want to go with him, he'll separate us." The youngest daughter clung tightly to Sarah's sleeve, silent but her eyes full of unease. The eldest son looked at Felix. Although he didn't have a good feeling about the man, he saw a trace of sincerity and guilt in Felix's eyes. "Mom, he really seems to know he was wrong," he whispered to Sarah. Sarah looked at her children, then at Felix, her heart torn. She didn't know how to face the man who had once hurt her, nor how to decide the future for her children. Felix looked at Sarah's hesitant expression, a flicker of hope igniting in his heart. "Sarah, give me a chance. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you all, taking good care of you and the children," he said earnestly. Sarah took a deep breath, struggling to calm herself. "Felix, it's not that I won't give you a chance, but I can't bring myself to trust you again. What happened back then hurt me too deeply, and I can't let the children suffer any more." She looked at Felix, speaking each word deliberately. Felix met Sarah's resolute gaze, knowing she wouldn't yield easily. But he wouldn't give up, he was determined to show Sarah his change and win back her and the children's trust. "Sarah, I know I can't force you. But I will wait, as long as it takes, until the day you're willing to accept me." With that, he cast a long look at the children, then turned and left with his men. Sarah watched Felix's retreating figure, emotion surging within her like a tidal wave. She knew that from this moment on, her life and the children's would be disrupted once again, and the road ahead would be even more difficult. But she also knew that for the sake of the children, she had to stay strong and keep moving forward. Since the last time he met Sarah, Felix's heart felt as if it had been struck hard by a hammer, the past recklessness and present regret flooding over him like a relentless tide. He stared at his haggard reflection in the mirror, his mind replaying the image of Sarah, alone and vulnerable with the children, her resolute yet guarded eyes piercing his heart like needles. "I must make this right." Felix silently vowed deep within himself that from this moment on, he would embark on this difficult journey to win back his wife. Early the next morning, Felix rose at dawn and personally went to the city's most prestigious real estate agency. His gaze quickly scanned through numerous property listings, finally settling on a luxurious villa located in an upscale neighborhood in the city center. The villa featured a spacious garden, perfect for the children to play freely. The interior was exquisitely and elegantly decorated, with every room exuding a warm and cozy atmosphere. Felix signed the purchase contract without hesitation. He wanted to give Sarah and the children a warm and comfortable home, making up for the stability they had lacked all these years. Afterwards, Felix hurried to the shopping mall, weaving through various stores. He carefully selected toys and clothes suitable for the children, from educational puzzles to adorable princess dresses, from cool robot models to stylish little suits, each item filled with his love for the kids. When choosing gifts for Sarah, he racked his brains, recalling her past preferences, and finally settled on a dazzling diamond necklace and several sets of fashionable and elegant dresses. These gifts carried his longing and guilt for Sarah. When everything was ready, Felix arrived at Sarah's place with gifts. He stood at the door, took a deep breath, and raised his hand to knock. Sarah opened the door, and upon seeing Felix, her expression instantly turned cold. Just as she was about to close the door, Felix quickly stretched out his hand to block it and softly said, "Sarah, please give me a chance. These are for you and the children." With that, he handed over the gifts in his hands. Sarah looked at the beautifully wrapped presents, her heart unmoved. She said coldly, "Felix, I've told you, it's over between us. I don't need your things." After saying this, she slammed the door shut, cutting Felix off completely. Felix was not discouraged. He set down the gifts and turned to leave. But he didn't go far. Instead, he found a nearby restaurant and signed up for a cooking class. He knew Sarah loved good food and decided to cook for her and the children himself, hoping to open their hearts through his cooking. In the days that followed, Felix was busy in the kitchen every day, repeatedly practicing various dishes, from simple home-cooked meals to complex Western feasts. He strived for perfection in every dish. After a period of learning, Felix felt that his cooking skills had improved. He came to Sarah's house again, this time without a gift, but carrying carefully prepared food. He rang the doorbell, and when Sarah opened the door and saw Felix, she was about to get angry, but then caught the familiar aroma wafting from the food containers. Felix looked at Sarah sincerely and said, "Sarah, this is food I made myself. Try it, it's just to improve the kids' meals." Sarah hesitated for a moment but eventually let Felix inside. The children, seeing Felix, were full of curiosity. Felix smiled as he placed the food on the dining table and called the children over to eat. The children looked at the colorful, fragrant, and delicious dishes on the table, unable to help swallowing their saliva. The eldest son was the first to pick up his chopsticks and take a bite, his eyes immediately lit up. "Wow, this is so good." The other children also eagerly picked up their chopsticks, eating while praising Felix's cooking skills. Sarah watched the children happily enjoying their meal, feeling a slight stir in her heart, but she still did not show Felix a smile. From then on, Felix came every day to deliver meals to Sarah and the children, sometimes even playing with the kids. Through his time with them, he gradually became part of their world, and the children grew increasingly fond of this Uncle Felix who could cook delicious food and play games with them. Seeing Felix's transformation, the children began to persuade Sarah, "Mom, Uncle Felix is a good person, and his food is really tasty. You should forgive him." Sarah looked at the children's innocent smiling faces, and the ice in her heart began to slowly melt. With the children's persistent persuasion, Sarah's attitude toward Felix gradually changed. She started to communicate more with Felix, though her words were still few, the coldness in her eyes was gone. Felix noticed Sarah's change and was overjoyed. He knew his efforts had not been in vain, and he was one step closer to winning Sarah's heart again. However, just as Felix and Sarah's relationship was warming, an unexpected obstacle appeared: Felix's mother. The mother had always harbored prejudice against Sarah. Back then, she was not in favor of Felix marrying Sarah, and now, learning that Felix was going to such lengths for Sarah and the children, she was even more displeased. She believed that Sarah, with 4 children, was no longer suitable for their family and would damage its reputation. One day, the elderly lady personally came to Sarah's residence. She wore an expensive cheapao and dazzling jewelry, her eyes radiating an air of haughty arrogance. The next day, she looked at Sarah coldly and said, "Sarah, I hope you have some self-awareness and leave Felix. You have 4 children with you, you will only be a burden to him. Our family will never accept you." Sarah stared at the old lady, a flash of anger igniting in her heart, but she still held back her fury and spoke calmly, "Madam, the matters between Felix and me are none of your concern. I have never thought of climbing up, I just want to live a peaceful life with the children." The old lady snorted coldly, "Humph, you say you don't want to climb up? Then why do you keep clinging to Felix? Let me tell you, as long as I'm alive, don't even think about stepping into our house." With that, she turned and left, leaving Sarah standing alone, her heart a tangle of emotions. When Felix learned that his mother had gone to see Sarah, he hurried to Sarah's home. Seeing the grievance written all over Sarah's face, he felt both heartache and anger. He tightly grasped Sarah's hand and said firmly, "Sarah, don't listen to my mother. I won't let anyone hurt you and the children. I will definitely convince her to accept you." Sarah looked into Felix's determined eyes, a mix of emotion and worry swirling in her heart. She didn't know if Felix could truly convince his mother, nor whether their relationship could withstand such a severe test. But at this moment, seeing the man before her striving to change for her and the children, a flicker of hope rose within her. Since the unpleasant encounter between Felix's mother and Sarah, Sarah's mood had been heavy. Though she loved Felix deeply and could feel his wholehearted dedication to her and the children, His mother's attitude remained like a heavy stone pressing down on her heart. Meanwhile, Felix, seeing Sarah's increasingly worn appearance, felt his resentment toward his mother grow stronger. He silently vowed to find a way to resolve the conflict between his mother and Sarah, so that Sarah could accept him again without any reservations. Just as Felix was overwhelmed by the situation, the four little ones at home sensed the subtle tension among the adults. One night, the four children gathered in a room, sitting in a circle, and began discussing how to help Mom and Dad. "I think we need to find a way to make Grandma like Mom," the eldest son said seriously, resting his chin on his hand. Yeah, Grandma looks so stern, and Mom always seems unhappy whenever she talks about her." The second daughter pouted, her face full of worry. The little son's eyes lit up as he excitedly said, "I have an idea. We can use our abilities to show Grandma how wonderful Mom really is." The youngest daughter nodded gently in agreement, saying, "Big brothers and sisters are right. If we work together, we can definitely do it." The next day, at the children's insistent request, Felix took them to the old lady's residence. When she saw them arrive, her expression did not soften much, but looking at her adorable grandchildren, a trace of affection unconsciously flickered in her eyes. As soon as the children saw the old lady, they sweetly called out Grandma and gathered around her. The eldest son took the old lady's hand and, using telepathy, quietly conveyed to her mind the hardships Sarah had endured raising them alone over the years, as well as her unwavering love for Felix. The old lady was slightly taken aback, a flicker of surprise passing through her eyes. At that moment, the second daughter, using her prophetic ability, said earnestly, "Grandma, if you don't like Mom, you won't get to eat the super delicious snacks she makes anymore, and we won't be able to play with you often either." Hearing this, the old lady couldn't help but smile and gently tapped the second daughter's nose. "You little rascal, you just make things up," she said. The youngest son eagerly took out a little gadget he had recently invented, a small robot that could automatically clean the tabletop, and began demonstrating it in front of the old lady. As he demonstrated, he said, "Grandma, this idea was something Mom helped me come up with. Mom is so smart." The old lady looked at the novel little invention, her eyes showing a hint of admiration. The youngest daughter obediently walked over to the old lady, nestled in her arms, and with her healing superpower, gradually eased the old lady's irritation and dissatisfaction, replacing them with a long-lost warmth and tranquility. Under the children's successive attacks, the old lady's attitude gradually began to change. She started to seriously reflect on her own stubbornness over the years and the hardships Sarah had faced raising the children alone. She looked at the innocent and adorable grandchildren before her, and thinking of Sarah's meticulous care for the children, the ice in her heart slowly began to melt. "Felix," the old lady spoke slowly, "I think I might have been wrong. These children are so lovely, and Sarah has raised them so well, she must be a kind and strong young woman." Hearing his mother's words, Felix felt a surge of emotion and quickly said, "Mom, Sarah really is wonderful. I've regretted my mistake all these years. She has sacrificed so much for the children." The old lady nodded slightly and sighed, "Bring her to the house. I want to have a good talk with her." Felix joyfully shared the news with Sarah. Upon hearing it, Sarah felt both surprised and nervous. She dressed carefully and came to the house with the children. The elderly lady saw Sarah and her face broke into a kind smile. She took Sarah's hand and said sincerely, "Sarah, it was my fault before. Don't take it to heart. Seeing how much the children like you, I know you're a good girl. From now on, we are one family." Hearing the old lady's words, tears welled up uncontrollably in Sarah's eyes. She held the old lady's hand tightly and said emotionally, "Mom, thank you. I will definitely be filial to you from now on." After resolving the conflict with the elderly lady, Felix began preparing for his and Sarah's wedding. He wanted to give Sarah a dreamlike wedding to make up for the happiness she had missed in the past. He invited the top wedding planning team and carefully selected the venue, striving for perfection in every detail of the wedding. On the wedding day, the sun shone brightly in a cloudless sky. The venue was beautifully decorated, surrounded by flowers and fluttering ribbons. Sarah wore a magnificent white wedding dress, like a princess from a fairy tale. Felix was dressed in a sharp suit, handsome and charming, his eyes full of deep affection for Sarah. Four adorable little ones, dressed in beautiful formal wear, served as flower children. They held bouquets of flowers, happily walking down the red carpet, their faces beaming with joyful smiles. Amidst the blessings of everyone present, Sarah and Felix slowly made their way to the stage. The priest solemnly read the vows. Felix gazed at Sarah with deep love, making a lifelong promise. "Sarah, I have made too many mistakes in the past and caused you so much pain. From now on, I will give my all to love you, protect you and the children, and make you all forever happy." Tears sparkled in Sarah's eyes as she nodded and said, "I do. From now on, we will face everything together." After exchanging rings, the two shared a passionate kiss. Warm applause and cheers erupted from the audience below. The whole family embraced each other tightly, becoming the happiest scene in everyone's eyes. From then on, Sarah and Felix lived a blissful and fulfilling life. Felix worked even harder to run the company, while Sarah devoted herself wholeheartedly to taking care of the family. Their 4 children grew up healthy and happy under their parents' loving care. Their special abilities, within this loving family, became little surprises in daily life, adding much joy and warmth to their days. In this warm and loving family, every day was filled with happiness and laughter. The shadows of the past had long since faded, leaving only endless beauty behind.